Okay, let's get started. So let's start with our introductions. I'm Jatin Phillipe, Chief Technology Officer, KFC UK and I. People often call me Chicken Technology Officer. I do not know why. And Philippe, my co-presenter, calls me the Click Man, and I don't know why. You'll find out.
And I'm Philippe. I've started really a business to challenge people because that's what I used to do best. So I thought I might as well make a business of it. And right now I'm really into flow, so they call me the Flow Man.
And whenever I look at this slide, the Click Man and the Flow Man, it makes me feel as if we are pitching for a Marvel movie. One day maybe, Philippe.
I wonder with Batman and Robin, right?
So let's get started. Before I go on to the next slide, let me take you back to 2018, the time we took some office pictures. No, just joking, because the previous presenter talked about 2018. In 2018, two things happened for KFC. One was the chicken crisis. Has anyone heard about the chicken crisis? Basically what happened was, yeah, someone knows about it, we ran out of chicken. And our customers started complaining to the police that KFC has run out of chicken, so they have to go to our competitor brand. Now when we look back at it, it sounds funny. It wasn't that funny that time for us. And the second thing that happened was that we started working on digital. So we started building digital apps, we started integrating with delivery aggregators, but no one was really interested. No one was putting money on it, funding was a challenge, and it was going very slowly. And then COVID happened. So what happens to a restaurant business during pandemic? It's very simple. You shut down. Sorry, we are closed. But on the flip side, crisis is always an opportunity. And we had built that muscle memory during chicken crisis, that crisis should always be used as an opportunity. And we did the same with COVID. We opened quite soon. We were lucky that we could open quite soon. And what helped us was, hang on, let's go next, delivery. So the work that we had done to integrate with delivery partners helped us continue. And that became about 35 to 40% of our business. Some of the restaurants were doing 80% delivery during that time, as you'd imagine. Of course, we had drive-thrus and takeaway as well. And the other thing that happened during that time was customer habits changed. As a result, digital became more easy. People got used to of ordering on apps. People got used to of using kiosks. Digital became more important. And we then changed our restaurant design. We started changing our restaurant design. So the image that you can see over there is our digital-only restaurant. That is kiosk and app only. So now we've gone from 5% digital, or less than 5% digital, to almost 60% digital. And thanks to pandemic and all the things that happened with it. And the other thing about it is that when you make a transaction on a kiosk as a customer, you all spend 20% more than you would have spent on a front counter. And believe me, we've got data for that. And when you place an order on a mobile app, you tend to spend 25 to 30% more. Of course, experience on the apps makes a difference, but that's what our stats are telling us. So it's doing really well, and we're going to talk about how we've gone about it.
Thank you. And there's nothing like explaining things with a good map. We thought Simon would be before us. Simon Wardley, but he's going to be later today. Who here knows Wardley maps? Do I need to give a crash course? So let's explain things with a good map. KFC is very interesting, and I used to be in banking and so on. But working in KFC is super interesting because things are really meaningful and very quickly meaningful. And if you look at the business of KFC and through the lenses of a Wardley map, so what is a Wardley map is you have the visibility to the customer as an axis, a vertical axis, and then you position the business around the horizontal axis of Genesis custom-built product, so something that you sell really, and then commodities, something that are pretty much taken for granted. And the business of KFC used to fit really the product element and didn't used to really include technology. It's super interesting, digital transformation is interesting. When you start touching businesses, you had no idea they were that digital. So get fast food, good food, and then local restaurant drive through a franchisee network and the main brand supporting that, the main restaurant chain. And what happened is the aggregators redefined the convenience. Typical business case, typical strategy in digital is redefining convenience to the doorstep. Amazon did it, the aggregators in the insurance industry did it, and no different in the food industry. But that was relatively discreet initially. You wouldn't so much order your food online so much. But with the pandemic, that has accelerated. And in maps, when things start shifting to the right, you know it's accelerating. Now, this acceleration also means that it is pushing the restaurant business into becoming a commodity of an aggregator. And that's what you call really the intermediation strategies and disintermediation strategies. So the map would look like that now, pretty much. And the aggregators are intermediating the customers, and basically the traditional restaurants are at risk of becoming kitchen utilities for the business of aggregators. Now, that is not just KFC, it's the entire industry. You walk into others, you will see kiosk, you would have apps to order, you will have all those things. The entire industry has probably jumped 10 years in the space of a year or so with the pandemic. And that's the acceleration we're talking about. Now, what to do in this disrupting landscape is think about re-intermediation strategy. So the brand, the relationship with the customers, and all aspects of enabling the digital ordering, homegrown. But of course, that also means you need the logistics and the platform to become delivery partner. So that's what about putting the clicks into the business, it's re-intermediating that relationship and is very, very meaningful. And at the same time, it also means using the logistic providers, the platform, as logistic utilities to the restaurant business. So it's continually sort of trying to swap back what existed, but with the footprint of digital in between now. Make sense? You see, maps are fantastic.
Fascinating.
So, how we got about that?
Okay, so how we got about that? I mean, how do you do that when you've got silos, dependencies, fractional value, and instability? Tough, right? And change is tough. I mean, doing change inside from within the organization is very, very tough. So what did we do? We looked at 4 pillars. They're pretty self-explanatory. You have to build teams, you have to focus on quality, flow of work has to be managed, and strategy has to evolve. But one of these on its own is not enough. You've got to have all 4. So just like in a KFC chicken, we got to have right blend of 11 spices for it to taste good. You need to have the right balance of these 4 pillars. Now, I didn't mean to exclude vegetarians or vegans over here. We do have a very good vegan burger as well. So go and try it out. So let's talk about teams to start with. Teams, I mean, is pretty straightforward, a unit of an organization. But what is important is teams cannot be there for team's sake. You have to be intentional about it. You have to ensure that they're collaborating, they're working well, they're standing in for each other. The other important aspect of team is you can't just have a team of one functional unit. It has to have people from other functions to create work structures. We had to break org structures. I mean, when I say we had to break org structure, what I mean by that is we didn't change the org structures, we created work teams. Just to give you a few examples, how many of you have used KFC app at all? No? You must try it out. Oh, there's one. Okay. So we got a loyalty program which allows you to play a game when you make a purchase. It's doing really well. And when we decided to do it, we created a team of course, engineers, product owners, scrum masters, some of them are here today, and folks from marketing. So they became part of the team. We also had someone from fraud management, part of the team to prevent the abuse. And then we did own channel delivery. Again, we created a cross-functional team. For on-channel delivery, we had people from operations, people from marketing, people from commercial finance, people from technology, of course, people from support. They all worked as a single team. That's what makes a difference when you're working as a single team. And the hardest part is to give accountability to the team without diluting it. I mean, I found it very tough when he was always talking about, oh, you have to give accountability to the team, not an individual. I'm like, oh my God, Philippe, what's going to happen with the delivery? But it works. It takes time to get there. It does work. Second is quality. Quality is something that people look at in the end, and as a result, they end up firefighting. I've been there myself many times. The trick is to make it important for people, and people engage when they know they're responsible for improving it. So there's a big focus on quality, and of course, we've got retrospectives. They're working well at a team level to look at what worked, what did not work, and we keep improving them. But we have taken those retros to the next level at a multi-team level, which is hard. We're still working through it. And of course, at some point we'll get there. But the other thing we've done is we now got Kaizen events. We have empowered our teams to run Kaizen events. Now, Kaizen is a Japanese term for continuous improvement in organizations. And what's happening is that teams are getting together, they're picking up problems, and trying to work out how they solve those problems, which has made a significant difference in how we work and the quality of work that gets delivered. Next is flow, the flow of work. The way I talk about flow is that in all organizations, I mean, a lot of times work starts in marketing, would get stuck in technology because of resource constraints or budget. It could start in ops or revenue management, it might get stuck in marketing for something. So what is important is that the work has to flow seamlessly across all functional units. And you can only do that when you've got the right team structures for it. And I mean, in fact, flow is the guiding beacon of all of this, to be honest, because if you do not have the right flow, if you do not have the right ways of working to establish the right flow of work so that the work can be delivered independently by a team, this all will fail. And finally, strategy. Now, we've been no different. We've had top-down strategies when we started. But we learned that you have to keep evolving strategy. And we've been through many crises. I mean, chicken crisis, COVID, energy crisis, you name it. I mean, there's been crisis after crisis. And you have to always keep evolving your strategy. Your goal could be constant. Your ambition could be there for a longer time. But strategy has to evolve. And you have to allow the teams to come up with the strategy. Strategy has to be emergent as well. It cannot always be top-down. So those are the few things that we've been doing at KFC to make things work. And let's see how we've gone about it in increments.
The 11 herbs and 5 spices. So how we proceed with changing is very much agile for agile. So how to build things through increments, and how to understand where people are and how you progress through it. Eventually, the idea, and I get that question very often, what is good look like, what is the end game? And it's arriving to cadences of everything where you adjust yourself as you run yourself. So to start with, really, we take those pillars again as different dimensions that we work with and where we're going to do intentional work. And here, there's some Agile 101, really. Looking at how teams how do they feel as teams, how do they collaborate as teams, and very often, the first step to go to is the retros. All the retros really great Agile retros, or they a bit rubbish. And Agile retros are often a bit rubbish. So how do we get them to be better? How do we drive genuine improvement? How do we finish basically the improvement before starting new one? All those things, how do we make that meaningful? And then the collaboration in Agile team events. I love walking into a stand-up, and you can tell the entire Agile transformation of an organization when you walk into a stand-up and it's the status report. The stand-up is a collaboration event, and it will only work like that if the planning was a collaboration event. So how do we bring those things into play where team events, agile team events or collaboration events, and how do we help the Scrum Master to realize how do we create the collaboration in those events. So we also worked at the systemic level. So what are the teams? Sometimes we have teams, sometimes we have groups. How do we make the groups a team? How do we make a leadership team a team? And that's a big deal. It sounds like a stupid thing to say, but it's a big deal. Because as soon as you pass the Scrum team, the rest isn't necessarily really a team. So how is that team assembly working? How do we also systemize Kaizen? So bring Kaizen to the level of the system so that we can work on more meaningful improvement. How do we find time for that? And it's really a tricky one, quite often. And then the typical thing is synchronizing the planning. You know, people will recognize the big room planning and safe sort of events. And there's nothing bad with that. You know, if your time horizon is longer, bring it shorter. It's good. It will allow to iterate. People will talk more often. So that's a good first step. It's not an end game, though. So then we looked at progressing from there is consolidating the initial value streams and having really leadership teams of value streams. So how do we get the leadership to be a team, not an individual? And how do we make that cross-functional? So a product owner, a scrum master, an engineer, and an architect very often. At least those roles need to be covered, however many people are in a team. Then we look at systemizing Kaizen at all levels and building the guilds into it so that we sharpen our tools around how we operate, how we see product management, how we see agile working, and so on. Then continuous planning. So how do we get rid of the big room planning exercise, the quarterly exercise, and do we make that continuous with lean portfolio management? And flow will come from that. And initially, when we start touching the strategy now, is how do we control the WIP, the work in progress? How do we limit that? Too much WIP, the rest doesn't work, it falls apart. And the strategy, controlling the WIP at the top level, that's the first strategy to do because you settle down your system. Next is really starting to collaborate on strategy. Once you have all those building blocks in place, we create a collaboration on strategy, and I like to talk about emergent Oshin or reverse Oshin. So the idea of the strategy being aligned, but not in a cascading fashion, in an emergent fashion. Because if you cannot change your strategy, agility is a pipe dream. You can work agile, but you need to be able to adapt your strategy and iterate on it if you want agility. So we have to work with strategy, and agile is really quite a miss on that, I think. So we work with the X matrix and do that across the enterprise and deploying that across the enterprise. So what we're aiming for, what is the cadence of everything, is developing the systemic leadership of people. It is also continuous coaching of the team to be teams, to stay healthy teams. You need to be intentional about that. Everybody talks about psychological safety and so on. Yes, we all want that. How do you do it? You coach relentlessly, continuously, you coach the health of the team to be a good team. Then we talk about systemizing Kaizen. So if you don't have excellence, you're going to be firefighting. You're not going to do anything else. You're going to go from one problem to another. So how can Kaizen people take charge of standards, people take charge of quality if they're engaged into improving quality? So we do that industrially now. And we're going to carry on. And the intention is to have more measures and the concept of OBEYA as well in there. So OBEYA is like the war room to see how your operation and your strategies are progressing. Then it's about continuous planning, so making the planning continuous as much as possible. It's a flow, it's not a step event. And inspecting and adapting continually to do that better. And lastly, about the strategy, continuing with the refreshes, because they are the collaboration points, but also creating collaboration around continuously doing the strategy together. So the concept of continuous strategy operating model, where it's no longer a one-year event for the exec, but it's a continuous emergent work of everybody. So, and lastly, it's stretching that to the whole business, and that's the most important thing. You know, we started in digital, now we're talking about the whole business. Over to you for the finish.
And of course, it's work in progress. These things never end. They're always work in progress. And in complex environments, flow is continuously challenged. When you bring new talent in, people will challenge it. When things change around you, people can get nervous sometimes, and they start challenging. So it is work in progress, and we'll continue to work on it. And that's how it's done at KFC. Okay.
Thank you.